Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. It's our pleasure to welcome you to the second webinar of this series of workshops focused on traceability, organized by WWF as part of the GCRF Trade Hub. This work is funded by the UKRI Global Challenges Research Fund. Before I present today's expert and moderator, I'd like to just very briefly remind you that the webinar will be recorded and made available on YouTube. Your microphone will be muted and your camera off, so please write any comments or questions through the chat, including the name of the speaker you are addressing your question to. We will raise them during the Q&A time. If you had any technical issues, please send a direct message to technical support Laura Mack through the chat. So now we can start. It is our pleasure to present Mrs. Dia Suradireja, Technical Advisor for the Deputy Minister for Food and Agribusiness at the Indonesian Coordinating Ministry for Economic Affairs. Welcome and thank you, Mrs. Suradireja, for moderating today's webinar. It is our pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you, Julie. Good morning, good afternoon, and then good evening, everyone. We will have the very good webinar this afternoon. Yeah, supply chain traceability is a challenge that occupies the mind of the business manager across the range of the company and industry, with increasing pressure from the finance sector, NGOs, consumers, and other stakeholders to share information about the sourcing and supply chains credential, the reputational, operational, and financial risks of not meeting this demand can be large. The issue is that despite the growing business imperative and the transition to traceable supply chain is slow. And then to ensure the transparency and accountability through the supply chain, traceability can provide the documented trail of each product. It is history, ingredients, and quality. Supply chains traceability helps to prove that the products meet certain of standard or comply specific regulation. And it in the sustainability context, it is provide an opportunity for company to credible make and verify sustainability claim. Why we organized the workshop this afternoon, this morning, and then this evening is palm oil is everything we use, from soap, from shampoo to cooking oil and snacks. But do we know where is coming from? Generally, yes. We do know that palm oil is mostly coming from Indonesia and Malaysia. In fact, in Indonesia, world's largest palm oil producer, there are around 16.8 million hectare palm oil plantation, and we know most of their location, especially for excess plantation. But there is a less data on the 6.3 million hectare of smallholder plantation location and supply chains down to the name and address. Research conducted as part of the Trade Hub found the wide, clear guidance and suitable tool exit for the effective and end-to-end traceability. In most cases, progress is slow. This workshop, hopefully, we will have some light on some benefit of traceability from its early implementers and impacted stakeholders to encourage fellow practitioners here to push forward their traceability initiative. So I think we will start with the first speaker, Honorable Ibu Musdalifah Mahmud. She is Deputy Minister for Food and Agribusiness, coordinating Ministry of Economic Affairs. She will present the role of the government in enabling and facilitating enhanced traceability for Indonesia palm oil. Ibu Mus, the time is yours.
Thank you very much, Ibu Dia. Honorable distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening, good morning, distinguished guests, all of you. Today, I'm honored to speak to you about a topic of utmost importance, not only for the Indonesian palm oil industry, but also for global sustainability and responsible business practices. The focus of our discussion is the role, what Ibu Diah mentioned, the role of the government in enabling and facilitating enhanced traceability for Indonesian palm oil. Indonesia being one of the world's largest producer and exporters of palm oil, with around 45 million metric tons, or around 60% of global production of palm oil in year 2022. And we feel it's very important that when it comes to ensuring that this vital industry aligns with sustainability, not only environmentally, but also for social economic aspects. The data shows Indonesia has 16.8 million hectares of palm oil plantation, and 6 million beyond, or around 41%, are smallholder plantation. Therefore, smallholders very important for Indonesia as a palm oil industry. Ladies and gentlemen, nowadays, Indonesia international market demand shows that palm oil should be sourced responsibly and sustainably. For example, in EUDR, European Deforestation Regulation, the Forest Act, the UK due diligence provision, China's green development, and etc. Therefore, it is important to have traceability to prove that palm oil does not coming from illegal or deforested areas. By knowing where palm oil comes from, we can help the industry, especially the smallholders, to have access to the international market and drive positively change for the environment. So, for the role of the government in enabling and facilitating enhanced traceability for Indonesia palm oil, there are a few key aspects to be considered. The first, regulatory framework. The government can build regulation to push sustainable efforts and traceability requirement for industry. Indonesian government, with Presidential Decree number 44 in 2020, has mandated palm oil companies and smallholders has to be certified with ISPO by 2025. One of the aspects of ISPO is land legality, which ensure the plantation is built legally and not in the forest with complete with the location of data. Therefore, the traceability aspect of palm oil can be analyzed and traced. The second one is technology in infrastructure. The government can build and facilitate the technology adaptation of the traceability tools. For example, the Indonesian Ministry of Agriculture has developed digital platform named Siperibun for industry and ESTDB for the smallholder. Siperibun is the application to register the big palm oil company over 25 hectares of plantation areas, while ESTDB is for the smallholder. But this platform have the question also with the data and the presentation that can be used for traceability purposes in the future. In addition, the government facilitates the public companies, industry association, and NGOs effort to build mapping and traceability tools, although still at the local level. Collaboration is the key. Indonesia government can bring all the information that has been already input in all the stakeholders, like academy, NGO, and local communities, and we have to collaboration to develop traceability solutions that are practical and effective. As such, there will be a new initiative from the Indonesian government to build, we name it a clearinghouse, which we will fulfill with the information for commodities affected by international market regulations such as palm oil, cocoa, coffee, and rubber. And then if it's already can implement it permanent, we can fulfill with all others commodity which will tradable to the global. The clearinghouse, which we will develop, will collect information from all other applications and platforms and conduct the due diligence under one roof. This huge effort requires collaboration from all other parties. Incentive and support is also can provide incentive for companies and smallholders to adopt traceability and sustainable measures. A new regulation in 2023 for the Indonesian Ministry of Finance has declared that the local government can receive the profit sharing from the palm oil export to build the infrastructure and others needs. Not only the producer country's government, also the consumer countries can also give support to the palm oil industry stakeholders, especially the smallholder, in the form of market access, training, and monetary support. So the sustainability and traceability effort is widely adopted. Ladies and gentlemen, the way forward to enhance traceability, not just a responsibility, but also an opportunity. We can improve the competitiveness of Indonesian palm oil in the global market, reassure consumers about the sustainability of the product, and can protect Indonesia's valuable ecosystems. In conclusion, the government plays a pivotal role in enabling and facilitating enhanced traceability for Indonesian palm oil by establishing clear regulations, investing technology, fostering collaboration, and providing incentives. The government can ensure that Indonesian palm oil can contribute to a sustainable and responsible in future. Let us remember that the choice we make today will have a profound impact on the generation that follow. It is our collective responsibility to ensure that Indonesian palm oil becomes a beacon of sustainability and a model for the world. To end up my speech, I do hope that this workshop will bear a fruitful discussion and a good result. Finally, I thank you for all the organizing committee who are inviting me to speak in this very valuable workshop. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ibu Mus. This is the strong message. And then high call for the collaboration works and then we see that the effort of the Indonesian government become the leading of the sustainable palm oil. Thank you. We will go to the second speakers. Ms. Veronica is Winahyu, a program manager Indonesia, Veritas Southeast Asia. She will present this, the social and environmental risks linked to the palm oil production. Veronica, the time is yours.
Thank you so much, Budia. Here's in the afternoon in Jakarta. Hopefully, everybody in a very good condition. I'm going to present on behalf of Veritas Southeast Asia. I'm going to present the social labor linked to palm oil production. Hopefully, it's going to help for all our discussion this day. Okay, next. Okay. As introduction, Verite Southeast Asia, we are an NGO who works mostly in labor issues, and then that's why I'm here to talk about the palm oil risk, and then we work in palm oil sector since 2008. Next. Okay. So as mentioned by Ibu Musdalifah, that palm oil is a huge industry, and Indonesia and Malaysia is the top two producer of palm oil. And then we face a lot of issues. First, we face, and then to address the labor situation in the palm oil industry, we have to see all the risks that we have, like a legal risk. It's because of forced labor is mostly it's an unlawful act. First is legal risk, and then violation will be leads to threat to investment and finance of the corporation, and not only corporation, also state. And that it's since it's an upstream and downstream, start from the plantation to the brand or buyer, it will affect everything that can threat to the brand and the company reputation. And it's also because it's contain a lot of financing, it's gonna also risk to trade related. Now I'm gonna talk about the basic standard next. On the basic standard, next please. Thank you, Laura. So we have like 7 basic standards that we all can use as an important to build block of responsible labor practice. First is ethical recruitment. As we know that recruitment is the first phase of a worker being recruited to a company, and there's because of a lot of level of recruitment, ethical recruitment will be needed. And second is prohibition of all form of forced labor and compulsory labor, including trafficking in person. I'm gonna explain everything in detail after this, and then prohibition of discrimination and violence, and then fair wage and benefit for all workers regardless of their background, their gender and other identity, and then human working hours, freedom of association, and prohibition of child labor practice. Next. Understanding the standard, where the business stand, where our position of organization or as a stakeholder of palm oil industry. By understanding the relation, it's important to help us, all of us, to define the objective of a responsible palm oil, especially producer, because producer play the biggest role of the palm oil industry, and it will help us all to determine the next step that we need to do to meet the sustainable palm oil. Next. please. Okay, now we're gonna talk about recognizing core violation, standard violation, and resource. Palm oil plantation, in the plantation on the mill, it's a require labor-intensive process, or in Bahasa Indonesia, we call it padat karya. And it increased the risk of workers or labor to expose to range of adverse condition and exploit situation. And among form of labor exploitation that we've been documented for years in the palm oil production, we find forced labor and trafficking, and then child labor, physical violence, harassment and abuse, systemic violation of worker basic right, freedom of association, and fair wage and working hours. So when we talk about forced labor, there are two main keywords that we have to understand. First is involuntariness, and second is coercion. So all work and service which is extracted for a person under the menace of any penalty, and say the person is not offered themselves voluntary, it's called forced labor. While trafficking is in person, is like, as I mentioned before, that the labor travel from place to work in a palm oil plantation, and usually they are in the remote area. It's a risk of trafficking in person. The next risk is child labor, because it's forced by poverty and limited access to school. Where as a children, of course, palm oil industry is a very hazardous place to work. It's gonna cause a lot of health effect and gonna affect all the future of the children. And usually the practice is not like they're being hired by a company, but usually they help their parents to do work, and it's undocumented and unpaid, and it bring high risk to the children. And then next is systemic workplace discrimination, violence, harassment, and abuse. In a daily life, a female or woman is already in a vulnerable position. So you can only imagine in a very remote area, in a palm oil plantation, there's only minimum percent. It's a very low number of female, and it costs them a very high risk on the violence, harassment, and gender-based violence. And it's a very common practice that a female or a female worker usually only work helping their husband. Okay. And next is freedom of association issue. It's lack of union present in plantation, limitation and harassment of labor rights defender, and then capacity building for union and representation in palm oil work is necessary. Okay, I'm gonna, yes, I quit.
Time is finished for you because it's 20.
Okay, thank you, Ibu.
Yes.
Thank you so much, everyone. Let's discuss more on this during the discussion and question and answer session. Thank you, Budia.
Thank you. It's very excellent presentation to mitigate the risk in the palm oil industry. So we will go to the third speakers. This is Bang Sahat Aditonang. He is in charge of the Deputy Director Diameter, and then he will present the current context of in the palm oil traceability space, gap, challenges, and needs. But Bang Sahat, the time is yours.
Thank you, Budia. Good morning and or afternoon, everyone, and welcome to my presentation. First of all, let me thank you for coming today. I'm Saad Aritonang from Diameter. Diameter is an independent consulting company based in Indonesia and has been working on sustainable natural resources for the last 17 years. This morning, I'm going to share the recent developments implementation and challenges of traceability to plantation in Indonesia, especially in palm oil. I have 8 slides and hopefully we can finish them within 8 minutes.
Yes.
Next slide, please. Okay, let's begin with the understanding of palm oil supply base. Traceability has been part of the commitments made by palm oil companies in line with market requirements over the past decade. It started with NDP commitments that require supply chain actors to identify their supply base before implementing the NDP commitments. NDP stands for no deforestation, no pit development, and exploitation. Buyer requires mills in their supply chain to take responsibility for NDPE compliance for all FFB sources received by the mills, which include collecting data on FFB suppliers, who they are, their location, and the volume they supply. This information is used to assess environmental risks such as deforestation, pit conversion, fires, etc., and to monitor them as well. But how companies implementing traceability to plantation in their supply chain? Let's see the next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, in Indonesia, based on our experience, there are 3 main approaches commonly practiced by companies when implementing TTP. But please note that there is no single approach or definition to determine if a product is traceable to the plantation, especially in the context of oil palm. So the first approach is to identify, the first approach that being used is identify supply chain actors, including its location up to direct suppliers. This include their own plantations, plasma as a default, as well as any actors that have direct business relationship to the mill. This could be a small-scale producer or often referred to as independent plantations, or dealers, agents, but not up to the independent smallholder who's supplying to the agents or dealers. Second approach is, this is the ideal TTP approach, where mapping plantation locations for all direct and indirect sources, regardless the environmental risk. And then the last one is a risk-calibrated or risk-based approach. This approach focusing on tracing the direct sources and indirect sources to the smallest administration units, like in Indonesia, we call it as village, and prioritizing those for further intervention based on environmental risk. The village serve as the entity used by the mill as an entry point for engagement, such as the implementation of company programs, or in case of issues like forest fires, conflicts, etc. And we can go to the next. And to provide you the general overview on how companies attempt full TTP when using the second approach, which is the ideal approach. I think it's already mentioned by Bu Musdalifah and Budia. In Indonesia, let's consider we have roughly over 1,000 mills, typically sourcing from 10,000 hectares of production areas per mill. This means the total production areas or supply base is around 10 million hectares. Assuming that 40% of production base consists of small farms, which equates to around 4 million hectares of farms, if we further assume that on average, one plot size is between 2 to 4 hectares, it means that there are up to 2 million farmers that need to be mapped, which is for a large supply chain company, it's difficult to achieve that because it's resource intensive. It's also cost is high cost, and also in terms of logistic and time as well. Next slide. And how companies and other actors are implementing their traceability. It begins with making commitments, building collaborations, and establishing a common understanding of achieving TTP, which includes participating in the landscape or jurisdiction initiative and initiating the reporting of their progress on TTP. On the other hand, both guidance and tools are provided to companies to help them fulfill their commitments on TTP. This also includes traceability platforms, satellite monitoring platforms are emerging right now to accelerate the implementation of TTP. Furthermore, Both mandatory and voluntary sustainability standards requires traceability information as part of the principles and criteria for certification. Next. Yeah, in this slide, I would like to provide a bit more detail on traceability platforms and satellite monitoring platforms. Regarding to the traceability platforms, there are two main approaches. First one is bottom-up approach. This approach involves starting data collection from the farmers. Some apps focus solely on smallholder mapping and profiling them without including supply chain information. This means they don't capture information about supply chain actors between farmers and mills. The other apps also integrate data from farmers up to the recipient mills through periodic declarations. Additionally, there are apps right now that record live transactions, capturing each transaction and the parties involved on the platform. And then the second approach is top-down approach. In this approach, mill is the one who is responsible to identifying supply chain actors down to the farmers. And we have in the right-hand side the satellite monitoring platform who has capability to monitor live monitoring on deforestation and conversion. But we have a problem where it's not linked together. So the next task is to explore how traceability data, especially for farmers or supply side, can be incorporated into satellite monitoring platform, which means that this will assist supply chain actors in monitoring and engaging their supply base to mitigate or take action if deforestation occur within their supply base. Next slide, please. Sorry, I have 2 minutes right now. And how far we can? Yeah. Okay, Bu. How far we come in identifying plot level information? We conducted this rapid assessment for one company who sourcing from more than 1,000 mills in Indonesia. So for achieving traceability to the mill, it's easy. But when we look up more detailed data, only 81% of the mills are able to identify the direct source up to tier 1 suppliers. 33% can identify a source further up to the supply base, which is the village level, and only 19% that able to identify sources up to the plot level. This is showing us that there is a lot of work need to do to achieving TTP up to the plot level. And what are the common challenges faced by company in collecting this data? Next slide, please. This is the last 2 slides, I guess. So the issues that they're faced by companies, mills and farmers have received several requests from their buyers with slightly different requirements, but also through different platforms. There is no data sharing mechanism. No clear incentive for farmers or supply chain actors to provide their information. The third one, data security is still a concern. Smallholder only reveal what they want to reveal. Some farmers will not declare hidden, unregistered, or unknown plots that they own. Second one, FFB dealers unwilling to disclose FFB sources due to commercial concerns of competing with mills for suppliers. Similar case between third-party mills versus refinery. And again, resources are needed to collect farmers level information, considering the dynamic nature of supply chain on daily basis. And then last slide for me, to close my presentation, I have put notes for us. Traceability is just initial steps in identifying and ensuring that the supply chain adheres to company commitments and buyer requirements. However, preventing future damage or remediate such damage becomes more crucial. With the increasing market demands for deforestation-free products, readiness is required from all actors in the supply chain in terms of strategy, infrastructure, logistics, and also incentive. Last point, last but not least, government support is needed as data guardian to collect and integrate all activities initiated collectively by the parties and to ensure that mechanism of information transparency can be implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Bang Sahat. It's very interesting note, and then I think we can discuss more detail in Indonesia, I'm sure. So we will go to the fourth speaker is Mas Angga Pratama Putra. He is a sustainable palm oil project leader in WWF Indonesia, and then he will present about the Harmony case study for, as a traceability tool by WWF developed in Indonesia. Mas Angga,
Yeah.
the time is yours.
Yeah. Thank you, Budia, for introducing me. And then good morning, good afternoon, everyone, where you stay and living. I will try to explain about the Harmony. This is the SAM tool we developed together with the apps developer. Okay, next slide. Yeah, basically why we need the traceability or the apps traceability. Basically, we get some issue or the challenge from the Tesonilo National Park. At least 75% is that the illegal plantation is planted in the national park, and this is still our homework. How we can solving that? And then in the coalition, NGO also released publication in 2018 and 2021 that we have the three key finding. One is about the measure of the palm oil plantation in Riau province that are certainly that still legality, and then legal based on the publication data. And then the second point is about the many of the trader and brand they is already have the NDPA commitment, but among of the buyer is still sourcing from the FFB illegal. This is also from the finding in this report. And then the last point is that the sum of company where mentioned in this report is there is the RSPO certified or the RSPO supply chain. And then the last is about the based on the ZSL report 2021 that at least on more than 70% that the company where is already have the public commitment about the traceability is the failed. Okay, next slide. Yeah, based on that, WWF also with some company, trader, a grower, and also the buyer, we have the initiative to how we can resolve them. But again, to resolve this problem, we still need collaboration. We cannot stay alone. This is also need support from the government. So we developed Harmony. That the Harmony is now already available in the Android, and then also can using by the future phone or the Nokia Tetot with the ringtone conventional. We have the three pillar for the Harmony. One is the action. Yeah, this is the similar with the application we can use for the Gojek, or we can use for the like the Grab, like we need register, and then after register we can track where is the raw material, or the FFB can send to the supplier, or can send to the DO, or can send for the any key actor, and then we can assess the potential with the material, and then after that the action is the application can give the alerts if this is accepted or not accepted by the user. And then in the last part is about the compliance, that this is the visualization. We can show that the tracking from the FFB coming from the plantation go to the factory. And then the second step is about the Android. This is talking about the tools that in Harmony we develop for the three tools. That the one is the Android app, second is the risk assessment tool, then the third is the dashboard. This assessment tool we developed based on the HCV area indicative. We already published also this report and in the HCV area website. And then for the legal, we follow all regulation in Indonesia, whereas this is already published by our government. And then also for the environmental, we also follow the government regulation. And then the last is about user. This is the important, who is the user for this Harmony? At least we have the individual farmer, corporate plantation manager or the worker, and then farmer group, and include the truck driver. They are also need the register in our Harmony, and then agent. And then the last is the processing. Next slide. Thank you. Yeah, based on that, currently we are still ongoing for the proof of concept in the step 2. At least until this month, we already collect around 247 transactions, at least 1.4 million ton, and then total user is the 247, and then with transaction is around 1.4 million. And then full TTP or the full transaction is around the 57. Yeah, full transaction is we can trace from the plantation until the mills. Next slide. Yeah, this is the I will just I think another application or another speaker also have the similar dashboard, or maybe they are still already implement. Yeah, this is the visualization of our dashboard. We can show the transaction. Transaction can help the farmer to calculate the number selling every day and until the month. This can help them to database, and then we call it the pembukuan in Indonesia. So this is also can support for the SOP. And then directory is about the fluctuative of the transaction we can see. And then the last is the supply chain and risk map. This is just the indicative. Again, I just want to note this is the indicative because this is the HCV area we produce based on our assessment. We have conduct ground check in Sumatra, ground check for the HCV area, and then we also overlapping with the government data like for the forest and the non-forest area. Next, this is the unique of the value of the proportion. In this case, maybe some of you also want to know about where is our source for the decide about the risk of the assessment. We want to, the risk assessment will be referring from the Accountable Framework Initiative, RSPO, and also HCV and HCVS. So I just want to say in this slide that the traceability is not stopped in the plantation polygon and then geotech, but we still need give the alert that this is the FFB is certified and traceable, or and then buyer can buy, like the green light. And then if there is not coming from the legal plantation, this is can low risk. And then in the red is the very high risk because maybe the FFB coming from the national park and also maybe the elephant habitat, something like that. So decision to accept it, the FFB in this tool will be coming by the user. Next slide. I think this is the last slide. Yeah, this is the last slide. What is the challenge in the POC? We have at least 5 points. One is the agent or the DO holder delivery order may refuse the use of the Harmony application. Why? This is the very complicated, like the Bang Saad also mentioned, and then in the previous mentioned that there will be selling for the who is the easy. And then the second is the limited for the incentive. Currently that the Harmony is not providing incentive. In the next we will collaborate with the many actors to develop this incentive. And then limitation for the network and connectivity. This is also the important because many of smallholder in Indonesia is still using the feature for like the Nokia. And then the last point is the smallholder engage onboarding to have depend on the mill. The last point for the challenge is traceability is expensive. So I think this is still need collaboration with the many actors. I think that's from my side, Budia. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mas Angga, with the last message that the traceability is not cheaper. Okay, we will go to the fifth speakers. Meg Phillips from the Cultiva. She will present the implementation on the ground challenges and success factors in the context of EUDR compliance. Meg, the time is yours.
Thank you very much, Ibu Dia. And so good afternoon, everyone. I'm Meg Phillips and I am Cultiva's head of programs. Cultiva provides software for digital traceability, but we also provide the boots on the ground field staff to help engage farmer communities and map them. To the next slide, please. So within the palm oil sector alone, we've mapped around 150,000 plus smallholder farmers in Indonesia. So it's fair to say that we have some good insights about the practicalities of implementing traceability on the ground, and especially how this has to relate to the EUDR. So we work with various companies, we do supply chain mapping, training and coaching, and support them in traceability. Next slide, please. So if we look at the EUDR requirements, the two biggest hurdles for smallholder farmers to overcome is actually the geolocation data, but also land legality. So fortunately, there's software tools such as Cultivars or Harmony, as we just saw, that can help overcome some of these challenges when it comes to traceability. And for example, what we are able to provide at Cultiva is farm profiling, farm mapping, and doing risk assessments and greenhouse gas assessments at a farm level. And what's very important as well is also offline sync features. Now, to adapt to the EUDR, we do have to introduce some new features such as automated due diligence statements, which can help the SMEs also comply to EUDR requirements. And even with software, we still require people on the ground to actually visit these farmers and do the risk assessments for them. So on to the next slide, where we highlight a few of the challenges in implementing the traceability on the ground. So some of these have already been mentioned, so let me just skim through quite quickly on them. So as we know, the palm oil supply chain can be quite fragmented and dynamic. It doesn't even necessarily stay the same. Another hurdle is farmer awareness, where farmers themselves might not be aware of the EUDR or the regulations that require traceability. And as we've already highlighted quite a bit in today's webinar, it's the infrastructure and logistics, and as well as the data sharing between players as well. Do farmers want to be visited once, twice, 3 times by different companies visiting them? I think not. So it's important to come to some solutions here. And incentives are a recurring theme, and I'll touch on that again a bit deeper a bit later. Moving on to the next slide. So one thing that's important to understand is that for Cultiva and the industry as a whole, the traceability just has to be the beginning in the end. And the real opportunities are in how we can transform that data into action to be able to bring a lot more added values for farmers. So this comes back to the principle of using the data for good. And I can provide a case study of that, where we can move to the next slide to show what some of our work that we do with GAR. Okay, so one of the programs that we have with the private sector is our Sawit Terampil program. And this is the perfect example of where the initiative started as supply chain mapping, but through this data collection, we've been able to deliver one-on-one coaching for farmers to help improve their productivity, help improve their sustainable farming practices. And we've done this for 5,800 farmers. And we've trained over 5,000 of them. And we've even transitioned them into a certification track where some farmers will be grouped together to be able to apply for certifications such as RSPO. And we've already seen some considerable results in this one, which includes increase in yield. When you're able to channel the data, provide technical assistance to farmers, and you can see real considerable outcomes in livelihoods and productivity and sustainability in the sector. On to the next slide. What I'd like to share is a bit about the key success factors for a project such as this. So when it comes to the key success factors, what's worked really well in the Sawit Terampil project is that we have very engaged buyers, companies that are very genuinely hoping to advance sustainability within their supply chain. And this trickles down to their suppliers and dealers as well. The strong relationships is very helpful. So when Cultiva approaches communities to work with, it's always with the supply chain actors who are well known in the areas. And this brings about a great amount of cooperation from the local communities, as well as all the supply chain actors. What's also key is a multi-stakeholder approach. So everyone is at the table here, then they can be able to contribute and provide inputs as well as engagement with local governments. And what this all does is brings trust to the farmers. And that's what's really key when it comes to traceability. And when you have to collect people's data, they want to know that this data will be used for their own benefit in the end. And this is where it's important to use that data to bring the value to the farmers. Moving on to my last slide.
You still have 2 minutes, Meg.
Yeah, no problem. I think, so this might be the previous version of the PowerPoint presentation, but what I would also like to discuss briefly is about the incentives for people to get involved in traceability. So maybe we can go back to the last slide for a second. And what's some of the incentives for farmers themselves, as I said, is that can we channel technical assistance to them, but also can we, is there a place for incentives for farmers for premium payments for their participation in these sustainable supply chains? And what we'd expect from farmers in those premium payments is that they've improved their practices and they contribute to the environmental protection within their community. Then even if we look at a company level, there's a huge amount of benefits for traceability to incentivize them, including better reputations. It can also include reduced risk of liability when it comes to these environmental concerns, as well as just streamline operation. Having this visibility of their supply chain can really help their operations and understand where the problems are and where they have to channel their investments to overcome them. And then even from a government perspective, that all these activities feed in very well to the national security national sustainable development plans that they have in place. And it's really important to come together and collaborate on this. And I think I will leave it at that note and then pass back to Ibu Dia.
Yes, thank you, Meg. It's very, very interesting presentation. And I think we will go to the 6 speakers. This is Marsuetus Darto. He is in charge of the founder and National Council of the Union of Palm Oil Smallholder, SPKS. He will present the Farmer Association perspective, meet with the EUDR requirement. Bang Darto, the time is yours, please.
Okay. Thank you, Kadia. Good morning and good afternoon on this webinar. And thank you also for WWF for inviting me from SPKS. I'm Marsuetus Darto, founder and National Council of SPKS. Okay, next slide. Please. Okay. As do we know together, there are several things important in the existing EUDR rules, such as Chapter 3, Chapter 9, and number 2 related requirement legality, and Chapter 9C about geolocation requirement, and also fair price, investment services, and also due diligence. Some of these things are interesting for farmers because will help farmers in context improving governance between oil palm farmers and companies. Like, for example, fair price, of course, will be very attractive for farmers to improve their income. We see that regulation of EUDR regarding geolocation does not burden farmers. If there is change FFB price and availability service investment from companies for farmers, such as training to increase their knowledge about good agriculture practices, best management practices, and helpful enhancement productivity. For the example, RSPO, Roundtable Sustainable Palm Oil. In 2005, we saw that the RSPO standards were very difficult to achieve by farmers. However, when there is incentive economy provided by the market to farmers, then to implement RSPO certification is
no longer difficult. So currently, there are 70 cooperatives that have received RSPO certification because there are benefits there. Related to EUDR, if there are benefits there, fair price, for example, provided by the companies to farmers, then all requirement of EUDR will comply by farmers. Next slide, please. I also tried compare EUDR rules and regulation in Indonesia. From this aspect, it doesn't problem with existing regulation in Indonesia, especially for farmers. For example, fair price in regulation ministry regulation ministry agriculture number 1, law number 90, and instruction president number 6 about national action plan of sustainable palm oil, and instruction president number 9 about palm oil moratorium. These policy instruments are supported by other regulations such as formation of CPO fund, plantation fund agency, to support enhancement farmer productivity like replanting, legality, and ISPO. However, we also need to starting that some of these regulations are not operational, so that farmers' data collection is not carried out on a massive scale, and also partnership between small farmers and companies in district level, so there is no change of FFB price. Almost independent farmers are selling their product to middlemen. Next slide, please. What is prepared by SPKS? Next. With variety market standard and also state regulation, we at SPKS develop strategies to strengthen oil palm farmers. We call that smallholder strategy. First, we realize that at the oil palm farmers level, many oil palm farmers are not connected to oil palm farmers cooperative. The majority of farmers are still scattered and individual. Therefore, we do mapping to do identification through surveys. Second, after do identification through survey or mapping, we initiate develop smallholders cooperative, strengthen farmers' capacity through training, and then facilitate to fulfill legality aspect. We collaborate with the plantation agency at local level to strengthen farmers and cooperative. In this stage too, we do identification surrounding forest farmers plantation. Third, after the farmers organized through cooperative, farmers own knowledge, plantation sustainable, farmers have legality, then we'll make it easier for us to build supply chain free deforestation by build collaboration with existing companies around it. Of course, this is not easy because on the process to develop it, we need a good commitment from companies in develop fair partnership with farmers cooperative. Next slide, please. In building traceability, we involve farmers at the village level to conduct survey with survey questionnaire that we have prepared according to standard development about sustainable. Apart from that, we also provide GPS to get polygon from farmers' plantation are carried out with farmers on land. Surveyed data level in the village level will in way automatic enter into the SPKS database system. We have been doing this since 2016, and until now we already collected 21,000 farmers polygon. Related polygon or point the coordinate in the EUDR are not difficult for us. The hard one for us is buyers material standards from traceability of FFB, and currently many organizations carry out mapping using the same methodology with a total of 70,000 polygons. Next slide, please. This is a questionnaire from us on our survey, like identity of farmers, information management, plantation, fertilizers information, herbicide information, pesticide information, harvesting, sales, and market access. Next slide, please. Next slide.
Okay,
Next.
2 minutes left.
Yeah,
Bang
okay,
Danto.
next. Next slide. Next. Okay. Okay. We do to analysis cost to fulfill EUDR rules such as mapping, training, legality, and development cooperative. We calculate the fund as much as €45 per farmers. Next slide, please. Okay, we have launched Farmers for Forest Protection Fund. It is function. The future is to support oil palm farmers who do conservation forest through incentive and benefit provided directly to community and farmers. Funds managed by 4F can source from donor organization, companies, and also government. The funds were provided to farmers after evaluation and monitoring is done of free landscape deforestation through the high carbon stock approach toolkit.
Okay.
Next slide or finish, Budia?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mas Darto. Thank you for the updating what the SPKS are doing now. So I think now the last but not at least we will going to the seven speaker is Mas Martinus Nata. He is in charge of the head of PMU Sustainability Surveyor Indonesia. He will present the use case of the palm oil traceability. Mas Nata, the time is yours, please.
Thank you, Budia, for the time, and also appreciation to all of the speakers that give us a lot of information that will be important in the development of our accessibility platform. We can go to the next slide, I guess. For introduction, Surveyor Indonesia is a company, state-owned enterprise, established in 1991, and we are already working in testing, inspection, and also certification. And related to the traceability, we have quite a lot of traceability experience. One is the traceability for biodiesel in Indonesia for the related to biodiesel, and then second one is we also develop traceability related to palm oil and coffee. And in the next phase, we also will develop for the cocoa commodities. We can go to the next slide, I guess, because all of this information are stated by. Okay, next slide. We can go to the slide number 4, I guess. Next slide, please. Next slide again. Okay, so at this point, SI, Surveyor Indonesia already has our traceability platform called eTrace. Conventional and out-of-the-box scenario, we are trying to do it massively in Indonesia because we know that most of the information related to the certification is still not enough. But we are sure, we are very feel that based on the information that we get from the map related to the deforestation of 2020, we can find what we call as a compliance area that we can go as the low-hanging fruit. In this point, we can identify actors through the supply chain, and each set transaction that comply to the standard, which we already checked with the deforestation before 2020, all the legal assessment, and then it will produce a QR code that will be passed along the supply chain as evidence. And we also prepare a bookkeeping with better system to accurately predict the source of the product as how the principle of traceability to plantation is implemented. we already have our piloting in palm oil, as I said before, and in coffee, and next year we will try the scheme in cocoa commodities in Sigi district, Central Sulawesi. You can go to the next slide. We also have our next roadmap development, which also the plan from our agriculture ministry in Indonesia, which we will try a blockchain supply chain scenario. We will integrate the data from the smallholders from ESDB platform, and then ESDB platform is a registration next for the smallholders, and then we integrate with the supply wood X that consists data from the palm oil sectors. And in the next, we will integrate with the data from the industrial ministries, which consists of data from the Johnson Industries, plus the data export from the Ministry of Trade that consists of SAS code and many other possible data that will be important for the buyers. And I know that there will be a complicated data information, but we are sure if the time is enough and the platform have time for development, we can prepare a more better platform in the future using the blockchain scenario. And then we're going to go to the next slide.
Mas Nata, I think your sound is a problem. Can you check it the microphone?
Wait.
Yeah, because
Is it
the sound is not clear. Can you check?
How about now?
Yes. Can you try? Halo?
Wait, Bu. Ya, silakan Bu. Sudah lebih baik Bu sekarang?
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So at this point, we can see the advantages, and we can also see the disadvantages in this year for if we go for the conventional platform. And I'm sure that if we go for the conventional platform, at least we can tackle the first challenging year in the implementation of traceability platform. But of course, there will be possible disadvantages that we shall tackle in this year, and in the next 3 or 4 years, we can implement a more stringent solution by blockchain, but there will be a loss of regulatory role as blockchain will be based on the decentralized system. And to achieve for the decentralized system, we need to reach consensus with all actors related to the data step verification. Next slide. So by the simulation flow, as follows: the data from actors, once they pass the data verification from us as independent party, so from the smallholders and also the company goes to us as independent party, and then we will produce a QR data, and all of the QR data related to the direct trade, we will pass the data to the competent authority in Europe. But of course, there will be unconformities. If there is unconformities, then there will be a rejection to the product. But if the information is okay and comply, the product can enter Europe. So in the same situation, also with the indirect trade, our QR data will be important to be sent to Euro competent authorities, so that there is need communication related to the competent authorities in Europe to ensure that the product that contain Indonesia commodities can be assessed by the competent authorities in Europe. So at this point, there will be a risk of rejection, and in this step, it is very important to ensure that related data completeness, and also related to some countries based on our experience, like in Spain or Italy, when we implement traceability related to the EU RED scenarios. At the time, there is quite rigorous auditing in this implementation of traceability. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, this is the example that I from before related to the implementation in Spain, that they usually have more rigorous auditing scenarios. They have their own map assessment. They will check the polygon and so on. And so there will be risks related to the cargo rejection once they arrive to Europe. So I think it will need communication and also quite a lot of discussion with the competent authorities in Europe how we can tackle all of this information in the beginning, because as if the information is related to the data aggregation in the certification, let's say the data aggregation in the certification will be published in the next year. And at this point, we will need the information based on the supply chain, based on the TTP scenario. And TTP scenario, there will be quite a lot of data that need to be discussed with the competent authorities. Is it comply with what they need or not? And then next slide. So at this slide, we can conclude that shared consensus is needed, and the roles of Ministry of Coordinating Economy is very important in the implementation of the clearinghouse that will be the national windows for traceability in Indonesia. And at this point, we need to have quite a lot of discussion with not only with the Ministry of Agriculture, but also the Ministry of Industry, Ministry of Trade, and also Ministry of Energy, because palm oil is not only being consumed in food, but also in energy. And in the implementation of in other commodities, of course, we need also quite a lot of discussion with the other stakeholders. Next is we need also sustainable financing, because in this point, segregation is not cheap. We need quite a lot of access. We need quite a lot of support from many parties, especially investor and banks in the implementation of sustainable financing. Third point is time, because in this beginning, we need time toleration, because in the beginning, there will be quite a lot of challenging situation. And last but not least, a better skills for map is quite important at this point, because the available map in Indonesia right now is only 5 compared to 550K resolution, which is not enough for development of traceability, especially if we will assess the map in Indonesia using the AI, because Indonesia is quite a broad country, and assessment related to mapping using the AI and a broad scenario is very important. I guess that will be our presentation, Bu, and time will be back to Ibu Dia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mas Nata, for your experience sharing here. So I think we will now we will have the time for Q&A, and then I will give to Julie to facilitate the Q&A. Julie, please.
Thank you, Dia, and thanks so much to all speakers. How interesting presentations, and we all want to know so much more about all the topics that you have been introducing here. Thanks all also the attendees for posting your questions, very interesting questions in the chat. And we will start with a question that it hasn't been addressed to a specific speaker, but it says, so ISA2 shares a reflection that shares that with better management practices, the palm oil industry could provide benefits without threatening some of our most breathtaking natural treasures, and all palm oil plantation can stop operating at the expense of rainforests. And the question is, the biggest impact of unsustainable palm oil production is the large-scale devastation of tropical forests, and which is the eco-friendly pathway to avoid that to happen. So this is an open question. I would suggest a couple of speakers might want to answer to that. So what's the eco-friendly pathway to avoid the palm oil industry to be linked to large-scale devastation of tropical forests? I don't know if... Yes, Meg, go ahead.
Sure, I'll make a start on that one. It's such a big question, so thanks so much for asking that. And if you ask for our perspectives on this, I would say it really has to start on the ground with the farmers, with the people on the supply chain. We do have to come together and coordinate, but one of the root causes of deforestation, particularly if we're looking at smallholder farmers, can be lack of awareness, lack of knowledge, but also poverty as a driver. We know see their productivity decreasing on the farm, and that's driving people to expand their land. But if we can channel the technical assistance, the training, the know-how, we can definitely improve the livelihoods of farmers, increase their productivity, and make them a lot more resilient to this kind of matters. That's a first note from me.
Thank you, Meg. Does anyone want to add something to that? Okay, so let's go to the next question. Jurgen Pesci addressed a question to Mr. Martinus. Do you know the specific requirement that will be checked when the product is shipped to the EU, when it arrived at the port, or before shipping?
Yes, Bu. So when the product is arrive in the port, the initial assessment that will be checked, of course, related to the quality. But then they will check also related to the 3 points that being stated in the EU articles, EUDR articles. First thing is the quantity, geolocation, and so on. That will be checked one by one. And the most important thing is related to the deforestation, because deforestation, of course, we shall have the same definition related to the map. And if we are using the map from the Indonesia government, of course, we have the map, but I'm not sure that the map that will be used by EU is the same with our map. So at this point, there is needs for discussion for that important information. Second thing is legality. For legality, Indonesia already quite have details assessment that already stated in the STDB for the smallholders and for the companies in the Siperibun platform. So on these two platforms, I guess all information related to the legality we can find out. And for legality also related to the map, because Indonesia is using the definition of kawasan. Kawasan hutan is a forest area. So at this point, of course, the commodities shall not came from forest area. And at this point, the platform shall be integrated with the mapping of that came from the forest area assessment and also the deforestation before 2020. That is the important area that shall be the low-hanging fruit for the smallholders to entry to Europe. So at this point, we shall emphasize on that point.
Thank you, Martinus. Does anyone to add something to Martinus' answer before we go to the next question?
If I can add, I think I just to highlight there is some checks depends on the country risk level, right? 9% for high risk countries and then 1% for low risk countries, and we haven't got information whether Indonesia, for example, is going to low or high, right? But there are some checks, and the checks will be done based on my interpretation of the article, can be done at the port or before the product sent to EU.
Thank you, Saad. Thank you very much. So we have another question from Ainu Rofik for WWF colleagues. So we have Anga with us about Harmony. How Harmony will be monetized? And another question about Harmony is, will truck drivers, dealers, and mills have to pay for the license? You're on mute, Anga.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. I also already write in the answer, but okay.
Okay.
For now, it's currently that the harmony is still free because still on the proof of concept, and then this is the develop for the phase 2, and we are still exploring the different venue for that, and then yeah, for our priority is smallholder, so smallholder and then driver is not pay for that, and then maybe we can develop the body or agency for the harmony in the future to how we can yeah.
Thank you, Anga. Thank you very much. We've got another question, and we have around 5 to 7 minutes left. So there's a question for Meg from Chris West. Are farmers paid for their engagement in the capacity building activities, or are they paying to access it?
Thanks a lot for your question, Chris. And so for Cultiva services, the farmers do not pay to access these services for both the digital solutions as well as the boots on the ground extension services. We mainly work with the buyers, and we collaborate with them to provide these services to the farmers within their supply chain. So we have services where the farmers can access digital applications themselves, or they can be trained by Cultiva's extension staff. And we also offer services to businesses beyond farmers as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Meg. We have now a general question. It's a long question. It says, to what extent do you think that creating a high-value market, for instance, paying a premium for sustainable products in the EU, which sources only deforestation-free palm oil, will provide incentives for other producers to become sustainable? This question is from Jurgen Pessi. So I understand that it's asking about how creating high-value markets that pay premium prices to sustainable products will incentivize also other producers to become sustainable. Who wants to start?
I don't mind making a start. So Cultiva, we work with quite a few supply chains, not just palm oil as well. And we've seen considerable success working with certified supply chains as well, where there is premium payments on top of the market price. This has encouraged farmers to do more sustainable practices and also participate in the traceability itself. And that goes for also the intermediaries, who can also receive a premium payment for participating in digital traceability. So I would say it is like something that certainly has to be considered, because we see much more smoother rollout, ease of implementation when it can be tied to even a small amount of financial incentive. And the premiums aren't huge, I might add, but it still is a motivator for farmers.
Anyone would like to add to Meg's answer? Thank you, Meg.
Yeah. In my opinion, the market must ensure fair price for palm oil farmers for traceable product, especially supplied by farmers. What we are afraid of is we spend of money to meet the requirement of the EUDR, but our products are still not purchased directly by the companies or market. And also, this EU regulation are not clear regarding the farmers. For example, EUDR requires that farmers' plantation must have polygon and coordinate point and must be legal. But if you check on the regulation in EUDR, are very unclear regarding what percentage of the total EU needs come from farmer supplies.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So does anyone want to add something?
Yeah, I would like to add a few points. I think echoing from Bang Darto said, Yeah, actually, how to ensure that the premium can be channeled to the smallholder, I think is one important key that need to be answered by companies, but also the consumer in Europe, right? And the second one, we need to consider as well the complexity, especially in palm oil, right? How you channel those premium when your supply chain is pretty complex, and then this is something as well can be considered by the actors on how we can trans, trans make a better mechanism on this premium price as well.
Thank you. Thanks. Yes,
Julia?
Angga?
Once, just sorry. How to channel that? If we seen that the article in the UDR in the article 7, this is the clear that the demand or the market country will be support the production country with anything. This is the specific, not I mean it's not specific incentive, but in the article is saying support. So I think we can develop this is like the incentive or the support from the demand country to the production country, like the Mas Darto mentioned, or the or something like that. But this is already clear in the article 7. Yeah, I just want to add in this, Julie. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angga. I think there was someone who wanted to add to that.
Yes, me.
Yes.
Julia.
Hi.
So
Thanks.
based on my presentation last time, the government of Indonesia, especially the ideas from the Ministry of Agriculture, they say that they will try to implement using the blockchain scenario. So if the blockchain scenario can be implemented, I guess we can find a better way, of course, with using the ideas from Mas Darto, that it will be important that the buyer shall create the different prices for sustainable product. And at this point, the channeling of the fund could be using the platform that will be implemented by the Ministry of Agriculture. Hopefully, we can find a way for that using the national single window, ya Budia, ya. Hopefully, yeah.
Thank you, Martinus.
Thank you,
We just have a last question we might want to answer very quickly. It's about how should we address mapping smallholders in the context of having to meet the EUDR requirements. Should we invest and develop new remote sensing technologies, or maybe opt for a more conventional way of collecting data to map supply chains?
I can start with that. I think even before EUDR is released, there are so many approaches that have been developed by a lot of platforms. I mean, different platform peers already finding some better solution on how they map the smallholders. Can be using GPS data collection, can use as well like a drones technology or high resolution image. But the thing is, it's not only the map, but also the information of the farmer is more important, right? Regarding legality, productivity, and also access to the market. And combining this effort, I think, it definitely it will emerge in the future on how we collecting this information.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much all for all your answers, and also to the attendees for your questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Julie, for facilitating the Q&A. It's very great discussion. So as a closing remark from me is there is indeed a need for a united front on the traceability for at least two purposes. First is that each plantation doesn't have different traceability system rather than integrated one of at least in the national level that can be guaranteed by the government. And then the second, each platform have the core format and data essential to answer the global trend towards traceability, which still allow other non-essential part of the platform or tool to be modified to the business's need. I think it is my notes, and then thank you to all of speakers for your great insight and for all the audience or participation for your active participation in Q&A, and then I think we'll see in the next workshop of this series. Julie, coming back to you. Thank you.
And yes, thank you, Dia. Special thank you to our expert moderator, Dia, and to all speakers who have shared their knowledge and experience with our audience globally. And just before finishing, I would like to remind you that next Thursday we will be hosting an in-person workshop focused on palm oil traceability in Jakarta. This will be a closed meeting, but we will be sharing the outcomes from this meeting for sure with all of you globally also. And then on the 16th of October, we will have the next webinar that will focus on soy traceability. It will take place at 11 a.m. London time. And it will focus on Brazilian production mainly and Chinese consumption, but as we always say, we hope the mechanisms and discussion that we will share will inspire the work that you are doing on traceability with other commodities and regions too. So please check out the registration links that we have shared in the chat, and we very much look forward to seeing you all very soon. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mas Nata.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mas Darto.
Thank you, Bang
Bye,
Ta, Bang Darto,
Thank you
Budian.
semua.
Yeah.
Okay, izin live.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.